Hello, this is Jon McNaughton, and I want to take a little time and talk with you about my new painting called Last Supper of a Blessed Nation. Now, this has been a painting I've had on my mind for quite a while, and, thinking about the situation we're in as a country today, and just the decline of the moral and the honor and the virtue, and just the slide in the way our country is becoming more polarized politically and ideologically, and it felt like it was a good time to do this painting. And I wanted to create something that would be iconic, that would allow the viewer to really dig into the meaning behind what I was trying to paint. And I came up with this idea of the Last Supper as a means to demonstrate how we've been brought to a point in our country's history where things are going to change. And America is a unique country. I mean, it was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and I believe that in the Declaration of Independence, we had the foundation for an American covenant that would allow the people in this country to choose God. And even though our Constitution does not define a specific religion, the American people were very religious. The Declaration of Independence itself mentions God 4 times, and it evokes a covenant that we desired at the time between God and our people to protect us, and that we would be a nation of virtue and goodness. Even in George Washington's first inaugural address, he said that without God's help and the providence of this nation, that we couldn't do it. We couldn't survive. And the American people have changed a lot since then. There's been so many different events and cultural changes that were hardly the country that we were at that time. And so I wanted to use that symbology reflected in Da Vinci's Last Supper painting, where you have Christ at the center, and he has an arch behind him, and you've got the 12 apostles. But in this case, I wanted to use 12 American presidents that I thought represented probably some of the most important presidents that served during a time of cultural change in America. So obviously you're going to have some of your founders like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, James Madison, and such. But then you've got other presidents like Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and of course the modern presidents today, where we've seen a major shift since the early times. And then I thought, there's so much interesting things going on in Da Vinci's painting. You've got one of the apostles has the knife in his hand, and so I was able to use a lot of these interesting interactions, and I imagined in my mind which presidents would be sitting where, and perhaps what kind of things they might be talking about. And of course, this is not the same covenant that Christ gave his apostles before he was crucified. That covenant was to prepare the way for them to give the gospel to the world, and it was something that was desperately needed at that time. Whereas this covenant, this is an American covenant, which is an extension of that. Just like it says in Psalm 33:12 in the Old Testament, where God says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." That is a covenant, and I emblazoned that in the writing on the wall behind Christ. You can see the words scripted in the stone on the left. There's also another scripture that's on the right side from 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14 that says, "If my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. I felt like that was pertinent to what's going on in our country today. You have Christ with his right hand on the hourglass as the sands of time are just about to finish. His left hand is open on the Holy Bible, his palm up, and you can see the mark in his hand from when he hung on the cross. There's also a gavel just in front of him, and when judgment is ready, he will slam that gavel upon the table, and the sound will ring out like a loud trumpet. Behind Jesus Christ, you have the federal Capitol building. This painting has a political message and a spiritual message too. And I'm one of these artists that likes to mix the two. I like to mix politics and religion and things of a spiritual nature, because it really makes people think about what's happening in the country and what's going on in their own lives and what kind of a person they are. And that's really what I wanted people to consider when they looked at this painting. I wanted them to dig a little deeper, think about its message, and ask themselves, where do I stand on this table? What kind of person would I be if I was here? This message is for everybody. It's for all Americans, and for every country that's willing to put God and Jesus Christ in the forefront of their lives. Some of the interesting symbols in the painting, if you start from Abraham Lincoln on the left side, you see that right by his right hand there's a key, and just in front of him you have the chains of slavery. You have one of those kinds of chains where they would lock them around their neck and then their hands and feet. It's a pretty gruesome thing to think about. But the history of America is one of redemption. It's one of overcoming the sins of men which have taken place. And of course, slavery was a horrible thing, but under Abraham Lincoln's time as president, we were able to emancipate the slaves and change the direction of the country that way, and that was a positive thing. Now, I chose to put JFK and Donald Trump right there because in many ways I see them as emancipators, either for civil rights or for improving the situation of black Americans. And Trump actually did more for black Americans than any president since Abraham Lincoln, in my opinion. And I know that's debatable amongst some people, but the numbers of black Americans that are supporting Trump and the Republican Party at this point are starting to shift from what was historically, for at least many decades, something that the Democrats were completely in control of. So that's kind of exciting to see. You see drops of blood on the tablecloth, and it goes all the way across the table, and you see the goblet of wine that's been spilled, and you wonder what that might mean. I'm going to leave that up to you, but it has a lot to do with the covenant that's been made and the blood spilt in America. An interesting symbol that I chose to put on the table is the scale. You have this golden scale right in front of Obama, and on it is a heart and a feather. And this is a symbol that goes back to ancient Egypt regarding judgment upon the souls of the dead. It also has some Christian symbology, and I'll leave it to you to try to kind of figure out what that means. But I think it's an interesting symbol to consider at this time. You have Joe Biden right behind Barack Obama. He's got his hand up to the throat of James Madison, like he's pushing him out of the way as James Madison puts his hand on the Constitution. He's looking at it, like, we did this, this is for America. What's happened? You see Barack Obama's left fist is placed firmly on the Constitution. What's he doing? In his other hand, there's a small feather plume related to the scales. Joe Biden has his right hand in kind of a strange, conspicuous way holding a knife towards Donald Trump, while Trump keeps himself from being injured by placing his left arm and hand against Biden to stop him from doing what he's doing. I thought there was some interesting symbol there. As we go across to the right side, there's Jefferson pointing his finger up to heaven, and I'll leave that to your interpretation. Jefferson was an interesting fellow, and I think that he's often misinterpreted for his belief regarding God. In fact, a lot of the founders were. George Washington stands amazed as he looks at the sand of time and the gavel as he thinks about what's happened in America. In front of him are 3 keys, which I'll leave to your interpretation. You have a tattered American flag disrespectfully folded on the table with a platter of dirty money. And, there's probably quite a bit of money stacked on that table. And then next to that are weapons of war. George W. Bush kind of is leaning towards Clinton and FDR as he gestures towards the sands of time and the other things on the table. And they're having a conversation, and I wonder what they're talking about. You see a hand mirror in the corner right near FDR. And, sometimes you just have to look at yourself in the mirror, face yourself, face who you are. And that's difficult to do for a lot of people. But there's more symbols to that. The tapestries that are hung across the walls are different symbols of America's founding. And some of them were designs by Benjamin Franklin and some of the states at the time. One particular one I like in the far right corner is the pine tree, which was a symbol, an appeal to heaven, was what that meant to the early colonists as they carried that banner, particularly with George Washington's army. A belief that God's providence would help them prevail against the greatest army of the world at the time, which was the British Army. So the painting is just loaded with some deep meaning to me. And right in the front, you have written in Latin is a monument that says ad finem temporum. It means to the end of times. And I'll leave that to your interpretation as well. But I hope that you enjoy this painting. It was an absolute joy to paint and to think and to ponder its meaning as I did it. It's something that I think will resonate with a lot of conservative Americans who are concerned about the country and the direction we're headed, and that believe that we truly are a blessed nation when we remember the God of our fathers and why we're here and what it all means.